What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to ForTheFans for the 16th of August 2015. In today's show, we take a look at the Premier League fixtures for the weekend, focusing more specifically on the Manchester City-Chelsea game. We talk about Didier Haarman's autobiography, as well as have another one of Ben's very special features. Let's get right into this.
Hey there, folks, welcome back to another episode of For The Fans with me, your first host for the evening, Ben. I'm also joined by the devilish two that are, Work the Space. Jack, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Devilish, that's a new one. That is new.
No, you know, you're a little devil in all of us, Jack, but more so in you than anyone else that I know. Also, Callum Keane's back. How you doing, Keane?
Hello, boys. How are we doing?
I'm very well. I'm very well indeed. So there's been plenty of football this weekend, but let's not forget that it's Ben's feature of the week. Now, we don't have a jingle, Jack.
Yeah, we don't.
I'm
more and more concerned. Is this the same as... Well, this can't be the same as last week. So is this a different feature to last week?
Different feature. It's like feature roulette, you might say.
I think...
always a different feature.
I think for next week I'll sort of jingle that. I'm not sure what it'll be yet.
Is there a secret feature for the next week at this point?
Well, I've got a whole week to think of one, Jack, so don't worry about that. So let me do the jingle. It's Ben's feature of the week, week 2. There you are. There's the jingle. Right then, boys. So last week we looked at things that we'd said and who had said it, and I thought it went down quite well. I thought you two did all right, actually. This week I've got quotes from different people in the world of football, 3 options, and you have to pick who said it.
Oh, excellent.
Right, are you ready?
Let me just get comfortable in my chair. I feel like you're throwing me right into the action here. I was expecting, a nice little mellow conversation to start the podcast. I feel unnerved. I feel stressed.
There's 10 available in Ben's feature of the week. I think what I'll do is I'll let you both pick a person, and you can go with the same person if you like. But we'll start with quote number 1. Are you sitting comfortably now, Jack?
Should we do, say, 5, and we'll take it in turns to pick a number, so we'll make it more quiz showy?
Bloody hell. No, we won't do that.
No, you're overcomplicating it.
How long-winded do you want this? It's not the price of bloody right.
What is the prize?
The prize is you don't have to do my jingle next week.
Okay,
and the other person has to do it. Right. Okay, then. The first quote is, I only show emotion in bed. Right. Is that... Pochettino, Roberto Martinez, or Sam Allardyce? Jack?
I can't imagine Sam Allardyce showing anything in bed. So I'll have to discount him. I'll say, I don't. Martinez seems boring. Who was the other option?
Pochettino.
See, Pochettino seems like a suave fella, but he is a little bit kind of stern. So I'll go with him. All
right, Kino?
I think... see, Jack said that Martinez seems a bit boring, but I think he's quite quiet. And he'd be transformed.
In bed?
Yeah. I think I'm going to
go... image in my mind.
I'm going to go with Martinez. Yeah.
The correct answer is Mauricio Pochettino. Or Pochettino.
I've got a point.
So well done. Allardyce would show emotion everywhere. So in bed. Okay, next one. It was lucky that Linesman wasn't stood in front of me, as I would have poked him with a stick to make sure he was awake. Was that option A, Kevin Keegan? Option B, Harry Redknapp? Or option 3, Ian Holloway? Keno?
I don't think it's wacky enough for Ian Holloway.
Wow.
He would have been contractors or something.
No, I'm going to go with Kevin Keegan, because it's quite a polite gesture. And Keegan's quite a nice man. So I think he'd be doing that.
Jack?
Yeah, I think the same, actually. I think Keegan.
Correct answer is former Blackpool manager Ian Holloway.
I thought he'd be more like...
God.
Well, the problem with Holloway is... The problem is, with Holloway, he said so many random things that it would have been too obvious if I went like super sort of come up sucking my thumb. You know, which he was quoted as saying once, if you fell into a bag of boobs, etc. Remember that?
I want to say yes just to save you some blushes and the fact you've not made it up. I think my favourite one was where he said...
Can I clarify? I wouldn't make that up. That's not something you make up.
My favourite one was when he said Ronaldo was hung like a hamster.
All right.
We'll move on from that.
Okay.
That's an excellent Holloway quote.
This quote was about Phil Jones. Okay, arguably, the way he's looking, he could be our best ever player. Was that said by Alex Ferguson, David Moyes, or Steve Keane?
Steve.
Jack.
I'm trying to think what context Steve Keane has a say on that gets written down.
He was Blackburn manager. He was.
Well, I don't know if he still was, but at one point he was managing in Indonesia a few years ago.
Yeah, it was before that. Anyway, go on.
That's the only time.
It must have been before that, because
he was
also the assistant before that, by the way. He was assistant for a few years. But anyway, Ferguson, Moyes, or Keane, Jack?
I feel like it's the kind of thing Ferguson might say. I feel like Moyes wouldn't have time to say that, and Steve Keane, it would have been written down if Steve Keane had said it.
I like the way that you sort of thought that David Moyes was so quickly in and out of Man United, he wouldn't have had time to compliment.
Literally did not have a press conference that he could have slipped that in.
No, I read it as that he was just so stressed that he didn't have any time to think about the best ever player because he didn't have any good ones at the time.
I'd like to think about that.
I'd like to think on his final press conference, he was about to leave and he went, "Oh, by the way, Phil Jones is going to be our best ever player," and then just walked out the door.
Now you're stuck. Now what are you going to do? So who do you think said it?
Ferguson.
Okay, Jack's going. I can't see how anyone would consider Phil Jones potentially Man United's best player ever. So it's got to be Steve Keane, logically.
The correct answer is Sir Alex Ferguson.
No.
He genuinely, arguably, the way he's looking, he could be our best ever player. This man's worked with Ronaldo.
What angle was he looking at him from?
Well, it must be one of those pictures where Phil Jones looks like he's had some sort of fright mid-game. Anyway, I'll move on because we've got 6 more of these. What would you be if you weren't a professional football player? The reply was a virgin. But who said it?
I know
you might know this. Yeah. Okay, the options are... You might like my other options then if you already know who this is. Who is it then?
Peter Crouch.
Peter Crouch.
Correct. Yeah. Right, but if you could put 2 other options, who would you go with? I had to go with who I think quite sort of... I don't know. Can I just use the phrase ugly footballers?
So one's Ozil.
No, he's not.
I don't think Ozil's that bad looking. Now.
Let's not get into this.
I feel like I'm offending Arsenal fans. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I went with Charlie Adam and John O'Shea. I didn't have a choice. Sorry, John and Charlie, if you're watching or listening. Right, next, ready? This was on a transfer rumour. I can't tell you what the transfer rumour is because it'll give away the move, right? But the quote is this: "If that's not a bullshit story, I'll eat a broomstick." Was that Jurgen Klopp, Jose Mourinho, or Louis van Gaal? If that's not a bullshit story, I'll eat a broomstick.
I think it's your turn to go first, Kino, so I'll give you the honour.
Give me a name.
I think a broomstick's too crude for Mourinho. It could be Van Gaal. I think Jurgen Klopp. He's got a bit of a wizard about him.
He does look like a distant relative of Harry Potter. Now you've put it
because he's got
there.
glasses. Because he's got glasses. You're basing it on nothing other than his eyesight. Come on. Who are you going with?
I'll go with Van Gaal.
All right, the correct answer is Jurgen Klopp.
There we go.
It was on Matt Hummels going to Manchester United.
There was part of me that wanted to just say that it was Klopp, just because when he was at Dortmund there was a transfer rumour every other week, so it was more likely to be him.
Okay, next quote. "Men deserve more recognition. Females can get a bicycle with my autograph on. They'll be fine." Was that Sven-Göran Eriksson, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, or Steve McLaren? Jack.
I was going to go with Mourinho after this week, but I guess I'll go with... wait, who were the options again?
There was one... Sven-Göran Eriksson, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, or Steve McLaren.
Have you seen Sven's autobiography? It has some of the smoothest lines that you'll ever... Kino, give your prediction. I'm going to find some Sven quotes from his autobiography because they're glorious.
What was the exact quote again, Ben? Can you just repeat it?
"Men deserve more recognition. Females can get a bicycle with my autograph on and they'll be fine."
Zlatan.
Was that McLaren, Zlatan, or Eriksson? The correct answer was Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Of course it was.
Right, next. "I would not be bothered if we lost every game as long as we won the league."
I think I know who said this as well.
Was that David Beckham, Phil Neville, or Mark Viduka?
Go on, Jack.
Phil Neville.
Yeah, I was going to say Phil Neville as well, actually.
Correct answer was Mark Viduka.
Oh my gosh.
Mark Viduka. It was Mark Viduka, Jack. You should have got that really.
Jack's just lost.
I knew the quote, but then I was like, you just put Viduka in because it's Mark Viduka and I love him.
Your lack of Viduka knowledge there, Jack, is shocking.
Yeah. People will be stunned by that. The next one. I took a whack on my left ankle, but something told me it was my right. Was that Dwight York, Lee Hendry, or Steve Staunton? It's a themed Aston Villa question for you there, Keno.
I'll let him go first.
I think an answer that stupid, it has to be Lee Hendry.
Jack?
Oh, actually...
I'll go with Dwight York. I want to say Lee Hendry, but I want to be different.
All right, Keno, you know your club, my boy. You know your club.
Is it actually?
The correct answer was Lee Hendry.
Oh my god,
that's crazy.
That doesn't surprise me.
Two more to go. I can see the carrot at the end of the tunnel. Was that Stuart Pearce, Paul Gascoigne, or Gary Lineker?
These have got me.
I can see the carrot at the end of the tunnel.
I'll go with Gaza, just because that's the kind of thing I imagine him saying at the end of a drunken night out.
I think Lineker's too sort of articulate to say that. So what was
He'd never be caught saying that, would
what
he?
Was
Stuart Pearce, Paul Gascoigne, or Gary Lineker. The correct answer was former electrician Stuart Pearce.
Yeah.
And final one, I think it'll be 3-0 City. Was that Dr. Benji FM, Callum Keane, or Work the Space?
Dr. Benji FM.
Dr. Benji.
Correct.
Yeah,
let's move on. I've got no more. I was me. You're right. And what was the score?
3-0.
Thank you very much.
I thought you meant the quiz. I was about to say I lost count because I think I lost.
I'll be here all week. So yeah, that was Ben's feature of the week. Did you like that?
I loved it.
Brilliant. Let's talk about some football. So the big game this weekend, the highly anticipated game, was Manchester City and Chelsea. The score finished, and again, if you follow me on Twitter, @DrRanji, you'll know that I once again predicted a 3-0 victory for Manchester City. And Chelsea, Keno, well, Mourinho's come out and said it was a fake result, but from what I can see on BBC Sport, 3-0 was the correct result.
Well, I was saying to you before we started that I was going to mention Mourinho, and that this was while the game was still going on, and I said I hope that he doesn't come up with a non-footballing related sort of reason or issue to give to the journalists after the game, because that's usually what he does when Chelsea lose, and it seems like he didn't. Obviously, because of the week they've had, he would look a bit rich, mentioning physios or doctors, or mentioning the ref or another kind of reason. He ended up saying that it was a fake result because Hazard didn't score when it was 1-0 City. That was their first shot on target, and it came in the 70th minute. I mean, like I said to you before, I think if we found every moment that kind of went in Chelsea's favour when they were 1-0 up, we could be there here all night. So I hope that the journalists don't talk about, and the media in general don't focus on Mourinho's interviews for once, because usually they do, and it would sort of mask a really good performance from City, I thought. Yeah,
it's strange to me how he's describing it as a fake result, because what he's basically saying is every result is a fake result, because sometimes teams miss chances. And that makes it a fake result.
Well, it makes me feel bad about my football manager abilities, because basically every loss I've had where at 1-0 down I missed a clear-cut chance, that's not on me anymore, that's fake.
No, that's just a fake
Doesn't
result.
matter.
What did you think of City, though, Jack?
They impressed me. I think the amount of chances that he created in the first half, particularly, with Aguero, and he had a decent amount, it could have been 3 or 4 before half-time, really. I want to say that surprised me, and I don't know if that was so much down to kind of the impact that Sterling and Jesus Navas had out on the wings, and then Silva had a really good game in the middle, or if it was just down to, obviously, Chelsea's defensive issues that they seem to just be having. I think Fabregas looked out of his depth playing alongside Matic when he was called upon to be defensive. I just think he didn't have the legs of Yaya Toure, for example. He was kind of playing the opposite position, and it surprised me that Terry went off at half-time.
Well, it's the first time in 177 Premier League matches under Mourinho that he substituted John Terry. They told Jeff Streaves it was... To be honest, though, they'll tell Jeff Streaves anything to make him piss off. So it's like, he's picked up a knock, Jeff. Just get back to your box. So it wasn't a knock. He went off because it was tactical. They brought Zuma on. And they were obviously scared of Aguero's pace and Sterling's pace and Navas's pace. But overall, I thought Chelsea were really poor,
I think Jack mentioned in the middle of what he was saying there, Mourinho is going to have to seriously consider... not playing Fabregas as part of the midfield too in big matches, because I think they got away with it a little bit last season because they started so well, took a lot of teams by surprise in the way that him and Costa were linking up, And then they obviously petered off towards the end of last season, and Fabregas did individually. And we all know how great a player he is and the assists that he provides. But I don't think against a team as strong as City, you can play basically Matic on his own in a holding midfield role, because Fabregas isn't going to track back. He's not going to cover with Matic. And it just leaves them so open, especially on the break. And you saw that quite a few times against City, who looked really good on the break with the pace of Navas and Sterling. Well,
in the first half, Aguero could have had 6. I think I counted in the end. He had so many Begovic, some of the shots were like at him, but he made some great saves. And I was worried pre-game that I thought that John Terry's the kind of defender, Cahill a little bit as well, that don't always trust Chelsea's second choice. And now last year is kind of the sort of the anomaly there because the check was there. But in previous years, when like Hilario's gone in goal, when he would go in goal, Chelsea would look far weaker at the back. And it was like Terry he was so untrusting that he would make them play deeper. And I think there was a little bit of that, because you think about the Aguero chances, every single chance Aguero had, he was kind of in the same place. Because Chelsea had sat so deep, they were being pushed back by Navas and Sterling, and it gave Aguero so much space and time to be in the box on his own with 3 defenders and still make them all look pretty stupid. So it's interesting to see how deep Chelsea played, and it wasn't very Mourinho-like. We expect these sort of games to be a 1-0 Chelsea. You saw pre-game, almost everyone was saying, it'll be a tight game. Usually Chelsea win at 1-0. But you mentioned the situation in the middle, and I think you're right. Fabregas and Matic can't do it on their own in there. Obviously, they've got Ramirez helping, but they're going to have to give Mikel lots of game time. Or Jack, you were saying that you think they're going to have to bring someone in. Is there someone out there that would come in?
Well, this is the thing. I think Chelsea this summer have been a little bit naive in terms of they've kind of watched everyone else strengthen up. And to be honest, at the start of the season, I wouldn't have had a problem with that, because I think going into the season, I think myself and a lot of other people would have said Chelsea, despite the other teams improving, still probably have the edge when you compare squad for squad. But there's something not quite right there. The Chelsea players seem a little bit slow. I know they had a shorter pre-season, and I just wonder if this result combined with the disappointing home result against Swansea is almost going to be a catalyst where now, with a few weeks left of the window, Chelsea seriously reevaluate their business that they didn't do in the summer and look to act on it sooner. I wonder if we might see Pedro potentially come in. I know he's been linked with Manchester United for a long time, and it seems like Pedro's leaving.
City are looking at him as well, aren't they?
I want to make a bold prediction, say Chelsea might just go and get De Bruyne, which I don't think they'll re-sign him, if I'm honest. I don't know why he'd want to go there, but I think Chelsea might spring a surprise with perhaps an Ozil-esque signing in the last few weeks of the window. And
possibly.
It's worth noting that Oscar wasn't there today.
Yeah.
And they played Willian in front of the Fabregas-Matic duo. And Oscar has been, although he's seen as a sort of creative Brazilian that gets forward and creates chances and has got that little bit of decision-making that Willian doesn't quite have, it was interesting that they played Willian in front of those two, and they looked a lot weaker in the middle. And Yaya Touré's been sort of derided a little bit in the press and sort of among social opinion that he's not really the complete midfielder as he might have been a few years ago. He's much more sort of focused on being the attack. But him and Fernandinho this week looked really, really good. So it was strange to me that Mourinho decided, we'll just put another creative player. They put Ramirez out on the right and Willian sort of in between Fernandinho and Touré, but it just didn't work.
I think touching on the whole kind of situation at Chelsea, like Jack says, I think before the beginning of the season, we would probably all have agreed that Chelsea still had the strongest, or maybe at least one of the top 3 strongest squads in the league. But this happened with City after they won the league twice, actually. And, they kind of rested on their laurels a little bit, although they were still bringing players in. I think Chelsea, the Falcao signing is kind of cover, and they haven't, and Begovic as well as a cover signing. They haven't, they don't necessarily need to go and splash the cash. I think they've missed the kind of, and they don't necessarily have to refresh their squad every year, because if you've got a winning team, why change it? But they have missed that kind of bump and kind of bounce in morale that a new signing often gives. I think they've kind of started a bit flat. Jack mentioned pre-season as well, and I said to you while we were watching the game, they just looked tired. They didn't look, and they looked like this last week against Swansea as well. In the final 20 minutes of the game, although they started the second half well, they fell totally off a cliff, and that was when City picked them off towards the end to kind of make the result look a little bit more one-sided. When maybe, if Hazard had scored, it probably couldn't have been, but they did fall right off towards the end of the game. And and you have to question the month off that they had compared to other teams in their position.
Can I say something controversial? I'm going to bring it to you, Jack. Do you think Abramovich trusts Mourinho in the transfer window? Because I'm looking at some of the signings he's made, players like Mohamed Salah, Cuadrado, and he brought in players in his first period as well, that they come in for, like, Cuadrado wasn't cheap.
No.
He was 25 million, he's coming on as a sub today, and they're choosing to play Ramirez out on the right at the beginning of the game. Do you think there's a case where Abramovich is saying, look, you've got a championship winning squad there, go and do that again? And we'll talk about it if you fail.
I think there perhaps is an extent of that, and if that was a factor at all, which I'm not 100% sure it is, I think what has been shown so far by Chelsea this season is just reason enough to disprove that. And I think for Abramovich, it's time to back his man, really. And that sounds a little bit odd. I mean, I saw some tables floating around pre-season about, Jose Mourinho has spent more than every other manager in Europe and, finished in the top 2 X amount of seasons. And there was a load of stats behind the fact he spent a lot of money. Mourinho signed a lot of money, but I think that particularly with this Chelsea side, he signed, obviously, Costa and he got in Fabregas, and those were big signings that really made a difference. And I think more recently there's been perhaps a few signings which have perhaps overshadowed those better signings he's made. And I think, honestly, if Chelsea make one of those better signings again, I think they'll be okay. I'm almost surprised to an extent they didn't go and get a Khedira or a Vidal, because I do think that defensive midfielder position, yes, they've got Matic who plays there really well, but when you look at the players alongside them, there's always been the questions that people seem to raise about the defensive capabilities of players like Oscar. Despite the work rate, is he that solid there? And I actually think that's something, they lack a Yaya Toure-esque character in a way, and that might sound a little bit bizarre. I think Ramirez, to some extent, was that. The fact that Ramirez was starting out wide today surprised me. I just think they need some legs in midfield, a true kind of box-to-box player. I want to say a Pogba, but obviously they've not got the money for a Pogba. And is there a player of that calibre who they can bring in?
They do have the money for a Pogba, but it comes to the financial fair play thing. City have just spent 50 million on Raheem Sterling. They've brought in a little bit here and there, but they've said there's one area of our team that needs improving. Well, let's just improve it. No matter how much it costs, let's just improve it. They have done, and Sterling didn't have a world-class game today. He did all right, though. He made Ivanovic look a shit defender again. I think we got a question about that, actually, Kino.
Yeah, Liam Olif came in on Twitter saying, @ForTheFans show, rate Ivanovic from shit to shit. I think that kind of sums up his day. It was very poor. Sterling kind of, like you said, had an okay game. I think over time, him, Maguire, and Navas maybe, they've got a lot of pace in that front three. And they look really good on the counter, which they haven't always looked like. They've not always had a lot of pace in the attack, especially when they were playing Dzeko with Aguero, and Silva's not quick, and they could be quite, potent. And yeah, Ivanovic is poor.
Do you think it allows Yaya Toure to be? Because Yaya Toure was like a driving force for City in recent years. Because they didn't have that pace out wide, Yaya Toure was asked to do this kind of box-to-box job that he doesn't look that comfortable doing. With players like Sterling and Navas, the running Toure has to do now probably isn't as much.
No,
probably doesn't have to carry that City attack as much.
I think
I think we might see a really good year out of Yaya Toure.
I was going to say Yaya Toure last season got slated. He got hammered after the World Cup. Obviously, his World Cup wasn't that great. There was personal grievances in his family that I think overshadowed probably the entire tournament for him. And he came back from that, and he just looked a little bit slow and a little bit lazy. And there was Cake Gate when his birthday was forgotten and all that's gone on. This is the first summer, I think, where there's not been talk of Yaya Toure leaving in probably 2 or 3 years. I can't think of a time where I've heard him being linked with going away. And I think there was one incident today when Joe Hart was shouting at him to position himself from a goal kick, and he looked a bit like, oh, don't tell me what to do, kind of thing.
Do you know what it was like? It was like, that advert, that sort of nature advert, when they make it's not nature, it's like a comedy advert, when that squirrel shouts John.
Yeah.
It was like that. Yeah, John. It was like that. That's what I thought.
His name's Joe.
No, I know, but that's not in the advert.
I know, I'm joking.
It goes John.
But anyway, I thought with the exception of that, Yaya Toure has been maybe labelled as a little bit lazy, but he looks back at his best from what we've seen 2 games in. I know that's very premature to be saying that, but he's doing Yaya Toure things, and that's not something he was doing last year.
Yeah, well, he scored a great goal, didn't he? We didn't talk. We pre-recorded. He scored a great goal against West Brom. And it was a Yaya Toure-esque goal, you might say, that he scored. But anyway, I think we should. Is it time to move on? From,
yeah,
I did want to, if we could, just touch on the medical staff instance. Obviously, I don't really want to talk about the whole, let's slate the physios for coming on. But I did love the fact that Chelsea had two head injuries simultaneously. And because they only had their two physios at the sideline, the Man City physios had to go on and give a hand. And you've got the City fans chanting at the physios who are treating Cahill, who's got blood pouring from his nose, "You're getting sacked in the morning."
I quite like that. But there's something wrong with football when physios are getting more abuse than Raheem Sterling. And that's annoying me. That's annoyed me off the bat. But, whatever. But, I think you're right. I don't like to see head injuries, but I do like to see a physio meltdown because Chelsea don't have enough.
I was expecting Jose just to rip off his suit and he's got these overalls on. He's going to go on and treat the players himself because he knows the game.
I'd like to see, he rips it off and he's just got bandages strapped to either arm. He's got a sling. He's just ready for it. Anyway, there were some other games that happened, Keenan, unless you want to say one final thought.
Well, I think the whole physio thing, there's been so much said about it. It's put Mourinho in particular in a bit of a difficult position now, especially when he comes out and talks after the matches, like I said earlier. I think he'll have to be quite careful for the next maybe few weeks with what he says regarding injuries and just generally what goes on during the matches. It's quite an unsavoury thing, really. And I think most people thought that he made a wrong step there.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ben, a quick question for you. If you're Mourinho, do you wish you could go back in time and change what you said after the game last weekend? Do you think he regrets it? Because Mourinho comes out and says some stuff and tries to pass on the blame, but I do wonder if this time, if he perhaps didn't anticipate the backlash that rightly or wrongly came out.
I'll respond to this, Jack. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I think Mourinho is going to live long enough to see himself become the villain at Chelsea. And maybe not just with Chelsea, maybe with the English press. And we see it happen with England managers all the time. And I just think that Mourinho is a few more weeks away. As Keno says, he's got to be quiet for the next few weeks. And he will be, because he does it all the time. We'll hear very little. He cannot wait for the international break, by the way. My word. But yes, there was other football this week. I feel like we should talk about it. Well, there were two teams that went unbeaten into this week of football, Jack. It was Leicester City, who I've tipped to go down, versus West Ham, who have got a player better than Ozil. So, the question is, Are Leicester City genuine Champions League contenders, Keno?
Great question.
I mean, the Villa were top of the league after 4 games last season, or something like that. We had 10 points and 0 goals conceded.
It's fair to say Lambert kept you up in a similar way to Pardew in Newcastle. Oh, you don't like that.
The work was done before Christmas. I mean, Ranieri could do the same thing this season, if they get a lot of points early on. Because I still think at some point, he said it himself in an interview after the game. He said
he looked really shocked when talking to Lineker.
Yeah,
Lineker went, "Can you keep this up?" He went, "Oh, we'll see."
Well, he said at some point it is going to go tits up, and it depends.
I love that. We get Mourinho saying that. Mourinho going, "Oh, it could all go wrong. I don't really know what I'm doing."
Anyway, go on. At some point, that'll happen with Ranieri, and it's whether or not he keeps his job through it. Yeah. Leicester were really good. Okazaki looked. I know Jack will like this. Okazaki looked fantastic when he came on, and it would have been good to see him score that amazing sort of first time flick, just that he tried to do before he nodded it in for his goal.
He's smaller than I thought he was, Okazaki.
He's strong though, isn't he? He's got a very
I thought he was a big old boy.
Yeah. I want this to sound. He has a bit of the Tevez about him.
Yeah.
Right, that is very kind. But yes, I know what you're saying. You compare it just because he's Japanese and you're obsessed. On the flip side, like Leicester, we talked quite a lot about Leicester last week and how well they did. On the flip side, Bilic has got a really good performance out of his team away at Arsenal, and Leicester turn up at Upton Park on Claret and Blue Day, and I wouldn't say they ran riot, but from what you heard from the game, they were all over them for most of it, Jack.
Yeah, West Ham did an Arsenal this weekend. I feel like they kind of looked at Arsenal last weekend, and all the fans are going in with optimism, home against Leicester. They're a little bit in form. I don't quite want to label Leicester as the informed Premier League team because it just doesn't sit well with me. But
especially not after one. At this point. Especially not after one game.
Well, Keno, I think they've got something like 27 points from a possible 33 or something bizarre.
They did finish the season very well.
But I feel like West Ham are in a weird position this year. I actually think going out the Europa League's been a blessing for them because obviously they got in through the financial not financial fair play, but just general fair play for being a clean team under Sam Allardyce, which I still don't understand how that happened. And obviously they've gone out in the qualifying stages. I think that's actually going to help them a lot because I think they could go on and have quite a strong league campaign this year. But this is going to perhaps leave a little bit of a dent, going in at home against Leicester. I think you expect more if you're a West Ham fan.
I think that these two matches have kind of been a sample of what this season's going to be like under Bilic. I'm not sure if he'll offer the consistency that West Ham fans will like. There will be amazing performances and really exciting football at times, but they will leave results like this at home, particularly against teams that you might think they should beat. They will crop up from time to time.
I can see them doing a job against the Chelseas, the Cities, Liverpool, Uniteds, and then struggling against like Stoke and Norwich and things like that. It's gonna. I think. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think he likes to play quite an attacking brand of football, and that might actually, in the same way that it often does with Swansea, that might take the big teams by surprise, like you say. But when they're at home against a team, like you say, they should probably beat someone like Leicester. It might. When a team sits behind the ball against them, it might sort of be their undoing. It'll be an interesting season. It will be up and down, I think.
I do wonder if that's going to be a pattern across the Premier League, because I honestly think this year in the Premier League is probably one of the seasons where every team is fairly strong somewhere on the pitch, and I do feel like it's probably going to be the season with one of the lower points totals winning you the league. I think a lot of teams are going to beat one another, and I think it's going to be very, very tight. I feel like we might even see a situation like we did, I think it was in 2004, I want to say, where no team was relegated going into the final day. I genuinely think you look at the teams who stayed up last year, there was a lot of weaker teams that stayed up. I feel like the Championship teams that have come up aren't the weakest bunch in a while, I feel like, compared to perhaps Burnley, who came up before. Even Bournemouth, they don't have perhaps the financial muscle power of other teams, but I think they've got some good players there, and I think they've bought smartly. I think it's going to be tight, and I think you will see a lot of teams like West Ham, your Leicesters, your Stokes, your Villas. I think they're going to win and lose against teams fairly randomly and leave us in a situation where it's going to be pretty kind of tight across the board. And even higher up the table, I see a lot of teams doing one over on your Chelseas, your Liverpools, your United, your Cities, your Arsenals.
I think just following on from that, I think one of the reasons that might happen, and I agree with you, is that because of the big TV money now, and we've seen it particularly with teams in the mid-table this summer, the signings that they've made, Stoke and Shaqiri is the perfect example of that. The playing field has been levelled slightly in the middle ground of the Premier League because they have so much more financial power over bigger teams in Europe. So a team that might be considered bigger than a Stoke, like an Inter Milan or something, that Stoke now have as much money, if not more than them, and they can attract players that an Inter Milan might be able to attract too. And that will kind of, although I think we'll still see the same top six, top 5-6 teams battling it out at the end, the middle ground of the table, the teams that you mentioned, Jack, that it will be a bit more unpredictable. It might make it more exciting. It might make it a bit more difficult to predict, and it might kind of lead the bottom teams adrift. But
if the Premier League this year is unpredictable, Callum, one thing that's not unpredictable is that Sunderland are dreadful.
Yeah.
Like really bad though. They've played Norwich this weekend. Norwich got a fantastic 3-1 win, but as fantastic as it was, Sunderland. Jack, you watched it, didn't you?
I did watch it in full. It was beautiful.
Not bothered.
Just before Norwich scored their first, I kind of tweeted out, "Are the Sunderland defence drunk?" Because it honestly looked like it. You had Kabul and Coates or Coates, they looked like they'd been out on a stag do or something. They just didn't look like they were with it for the game, if I'm honest. Then you've got Lee Catamole in front who just constantly looks not quite with it, and I think he gave away the ball that led to the corner which Norwich scored from. It was worrying, and to be honest, before this game, after the first game, I kind of wanted to label the blame with the Sunderland players and not Dick Advocaat. And even after the game against Norwich where they lost 3-1, I still felt like the players, weren't that great. But then Dick Advocaat came out. I don't know if you heard what he said in his post-match interview, but for those that didn't, he basically said that their performances in pre-season were the same as the ones they've given so far, and he just hoped it would change. And he's responsible for it not changing. And it's kind of like, if you were playing like this in pre-season, you've got to do something about it. You can't just kind of sit and go, "Oh, it'll be fine, that kind of idea that the house is on fire, but not going to do anything about it. It'll just burn out.
Yeah.
The thing is, they're set up to be quite... I think he sets them up to be quite a dynamic midfield, quite free-flowing. But really, the players they've got, they could be a bit of a... Sort of, the retro Stoke Allardyce team.
I was going to go with retro Bolton, but...
Well, yeah, a little bit like that. Pantilimon, Jones, Quatters, Kabul, Van Alno. And then in front of them... This midfield isn't that bad. Larson has been a good Premier League player for a while. Catamol and Mvia. Mvia's spoken about so highly in Europe, and he's finally got a chance in the Premier League. And on his debut, he's done pretty poorly. And then Lenz on the other side. Now, without looking at their striker issue, if you like, with Fletcher, Danny Graham, Defoe, that sort of beginning 8, that 4 at the back and the 4 in the middle, isn't that bad. If they set up differently, you could see them getting something out of a game.
They didn't look very energised in this game. There was no pressing by them. Norwich were able just to walk into the final third with the ball, and Redmond loved it, having that space to run into. With Sunderland, I just don't know what to think, if I'm honest, because they need an Asamoah Gyan. That's what they need. They need to re-sign him up front.
Don't we all need one of those?
Yeah, I think the problem, touching on the problem with Sunderland, I think the blame lies with the players, and then obviously, like you say, Jack, Dick Advocat didn't kind of make out as though he was, had paid a lot of attention to the kind of the setup of the team, and he kind of hoped that it would change. But also, like the fans, it seems quite from a, I might take a bit of flack here, but from an outsider's point of view, when Sunderland aren't playing well, particularly after what they've seen for the last 2 or 3 years, it seems like at the Stadium of Light it can become quite a poisonous atmosphere. It seems like that they can turn on the players very quickly. That can lead to worse performances. I mean, it's happened at the Villa a few times, but you always see on Match of the Day, you see Sunderland fans like leaving at half time and an hour in. And
they were walking
out
out in the 38th minute to go get their half time burgers. I assume that they were going for the food.
No, they were getting drunk. They were like, "I'm going to enjoy this. I paid 40 quid. I'm going to get a drink." But to be fair, I thought it was interesting. When you're a newly promoted side, right, in the Championship, if you're a good Championship team, which Norwich, Watford and Bournemouth all were last year, obviously they went up, but they thrive on the space that's given and is available, and that's one thing they lose in the Premier League. Not yesterday for Norwich. Sunderland gave them acres, to the point where Redmond, Houlihan looked like Oscar.
Well, Houlihan's got 3 assists so far.
I slagged him off pre-season saying that he's not Premier League
I still
quality.
don't think he's Premier League quality, if I'm honest. I think he's got 3 assists in 2 games, but that's flattered him somewhat.
Yeah,
he's disproving me right now.
Wes Houlihan looks really good if you give him 10 seconds for every decision. He's better than that. Okay, that's a bit unfair. But if you give him 3 seconds, right, for every decision, and 3 seconds isn't me being sort of ridiculous and just guessing. I watched the game. 3 seconds he had every time he got the ball. It's quite easy for a player like Wes Houlihan to pick apart a team that let him do that. And this isn't like a top quality player. Houlihan's a decent player, but it's so easy. I was going to
say, Houlihan, I love him as a player, but there's a reason he got in the Football League Team of the Decade.
Yeah.
When you're in the Football League Team of the Decade,
bribery, that's why.
It perhaps shows where your peak is. And for me, he's not really done it, and he's had a few chances with Norwich in the Premier League. So far this year, he's doing great, and I hope he continues, because I'd like to see Norwich stay up, purely from a completely biased standpoint of half my family's from Norwich.
We should also a little nod to Alex Neil, who is still unbeaten as Norwich manager away from home.
He is unbeaten away from home, and that's a good record. I think in these this game in particular, Sunderland was so poor that we didn't really find anything new out about Norwich. I feel like Sunderland were poor, and any team really would have beaten them in the league if they turned up. Looking to play. And like you say about Houlihan, he's looked good. We didn't really learn anything new about Norwich or Alex Neil's tactics or anything. And it'll be interesting to see if they can continue the records like that, throughout the season.
Now, earlier on, we spoke a little bit about Stoke spending power, and not only did they have spending power, but they had comeback power at the weekend. Spurs went 2-0 up, and Stoke pulled it back. They Spursed it up, Jack. They did a Spurs thing.
They did, and to be honest, if Spurs are 2-0 up, even against this current Stoke side, you favour them to stay in it, but they've not. And this was without Shaqiri as well. He's banned. I think he has a suspension from, prior to moving to England.
It was from the Coppa Italia last year.
Do you like that? Do you like the fact it carries over? Because I do like it. Personally, I think I quite like that.
I do, yeah.
I think it should carry over. If you've been a naughty boy, you don't just go on holiday and you're not a naughty boy anymore. That's tough. You're still a naughty boy.
I didn't see that much of this game, to be honest, but Spurs will want to beat Stoke, even if it is the current Stoke team. Because my big worry for Spurs is that last year they finished 5th, and that was largely down to Harry Kane's goals. I believe Eriksen maybe got 10 goals and 2 assists, and he was like 2nd in the charts.
Yeah.
And Spurs need to win these kind of games, because these are the games that are going to define where they finish. Because I think Stoke will probably be, trying to push if they can for that Europa League spot, and to draw here, it's going to feel like a loss. I think, given the circumstances, just simply put, isn't good enough for a Spurs team who, realistically, their ambitions, in the next few seasons is to consistently finish top 4 if possible and get that Champions League football.
Yeah, well, it was telling that once they brought Kane off, I think they brought him off in about the 80th minute.
No, it was 64th.
Was it really? Was it that early? That makes it worse then, because when they brought him off, they didn't have a recognised striker on the pitch.
No, they brought him off for Lamella. I don't know. Was he injured?
Exactly. Well, I'm not sure, but that it was glaringly obvious when you were watching the game that they didn't have a focal point at all. They've only got Kane now. Soldado's gone, and Adebayor. I don't know what Adebayor's doing, but they won't.
I don't think he knows what he's doing.
He probably won't play for Spurs again. You've only got Harry Kane. They have to sign a striker.
They've signed a striker.
Well, yeah.
A little story for this. They've signed a new striker called, I'm going to call him Clint, because he's a Cameroonian. They've signed him from France, and he looks like he could be okay. Last season he got 8 goals and 9 assists in 33. He's only like early 20s, and he did his introducing video over on the Stoke YouTube channel, which was great for me, because I'm thinking, right, we're going to talk about this guy at some point.
You mean Spurs, but go on.
Who did I say?
Stoke.
Well, Stoke, which is fair enough, because we are talking about them.
Spurs, Stoke. The pace similar football. I'm going to get slated for that. Anyway, the point I was going to make was I went on the Spurs YouTube channel and they had a video specifically on how to say this guy's name. Not even the Spurs fans thought it clarified how to say his name. He's just like, he goes, you can say my name is Nidji Clinton. But he said it's like one word. He's just like, you can just call me Clint. So Clint is going to need to pull a number for them this year.
Well, I still think they need players, but I'm not entirely sure where they need those players. I think they need another... Like we look at, we'll talk about Stoke. Stoke have just bought Shaqiri. Spurs could have done with him.
Stoke continue. Like you say, it's 2-0 up against Stoke at home. It's a game that a team like Spurs would expect to hold out. But Stoke's results just continue to impress me, as well as how they're handling everything off the pitch. I mean, they really sort of the kind of the Pulis style Stoke is almost a forgotten memory now. They've been really transformed on and off the pitch over the last few years. I think Hughes deserves a lot of credit for that. And like you say, Shaqiri is the kind of player that Spurs would love right now.
Do you think they would love him, though? Because I don't think Spurs need any more attack.
Yes.
Do Spurs need any more attacking midfielders?
Well, the problem...
He's better than Townsend.
He is better than
I'll say that much.
But then when you look at the players they've got, Lamela, Eriksen, they're players who you expect to step up and kind of, I guess, help cover the likes of Townsend. I feel like...
The problem is that... Spurs over the last few seasons have had a lot of turnover of players, particularly in those front positions. Like even Harry Kane came in midway through last season, and I'm sure Spurs fans are probably sick of the amount of players that they go through in those positions. They need a bit of solidity, but at the same time, they do need maybe 1 or 2. I'm not sure they need a complete overhaul. I'm not sure Eric Lamela will. I mean, he's got a lot of potential, and people have kind of been waiting for him to click in English football. Chadley's looked consistent for about a year now. Eriksen, obviously, has probably been their best recent signing. But they could maybe do with one more player if Townsend does go.
The thing is, the Shaqiri transfer is going to piss off a lot of fans of teams if he does really well. Because you'll even have Liverpool fans saying it, and Tottenham fans will be saying it, Everton fans will be saying it. They'll be going, hang on, if Stoke are signing Shaqiri and he's doing this in the Premier League, say he scores 5 in his first 6 or something like that.
What are we doing?
It's like, where are we in the transfer market? Yeah. Stoke are managing to pick up Shaqiri. They've got Afellay. They've got Arnautovic, who was a decent sign at the time for them. Van Ginkel's gone from Chelsea. Why are we not in the market for these players that are obviously quality? And a player like Shaqiri, it's not like he is taking a step down from Stoke, but you look at the clubs he's been at. He's been at Bayern, he's been at Inter. I think if I'm a Spurs fan and you see Shaqiri absolutely tearing apart Ivanovic in a few weeks, which is no doubt going to happen on current form, then they're going to be saying, well, Chadley's great in that and Townsend's not bad and Mason's a decent midfielder, but we should be going in with 12 million. We should be going in for this.
I do love kind of seemingly Stoke's new scouting policy, which is to boot up Football Manager 2008, holiday to 2015, then sign all the wonder kids who make it. You've got your Afellay, you've got your Bojan, you got your Shaqiri. That's basically their approach right now. And
I would love to see Freddie Adu come in on loan.
yeah,
just to,
well, he's
seal
playing
it.
in Norway at the moment, I think. Or is
He I
saw him score a free kick on the internet a while ago, and then that's all I've heard from him. He's probably left there since, hasn't he? Let's be honest.
I saw him score a free kick on the internet.
Well,
I think that's my favourite quote this week.
Freddie Adu. But anyway, I know Tottenham have been linked with Berahino. I think that probably is going to happen based on Pulis. Obviously, we're not going to talk about the West Brom-Watford game, but I think Watford will be happy to keep a clean sheet at home. But West Brom, Pulis came out after the game and said there's going to be a lot of transfer stuff going on at West Brom. So I think that's a signal that Berahino is probably leaving.
Well, they better be, because they're dreadful as well.
I think he's going to Stoke. Not to Stoke, to Tottenham. He could probably go to Stoke based on what's happening at the moment.
They've bought in Rondon, and if I'm Ricky Lambert, I'm going, well, hang on. That's why you bought me, right? Like, I'm sure I am Rondon, but I'm English. Well, it's kind of. But West Brom need players. I'm not sure Rondon is the answer. I think they're a bit poor in the middle. I don't think they're very good at the back. And I think their goalkeeper situation's not great.
Do you think West Brom could be an outside bet to go down this year if they don't?
I've said they'll go down, Callum.
Yeah.
Pulis eventually has to come unstuck.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they're going to stay up just based on goals.
Well, they're going
I know they drew 0-0, so for me to go, they're going to stay up. But I think they'll get some big goals, and I think they're the kind of team who will get goals and will get wins as a result against those kind of trickier opponents.
Yeah, but Jack, how many times do we see a club spend 10+ million on a striker? He comes in, he gets 3 goals in 20, and you'll go, oh, what a waste of money. And then by that time, you're going down, he's back off to Russia.
I've got faith in London. I've got a Venezuela flag propped up in my bedroom. I haven't yet. I'll get that sorted. I'm going to fly the flag for Rondon this year because I think he'll get 15 goals.
It just smells of. It looks to me very, very much like the Mitrovic signing for. Is it Mitrovic? No, Mitroglou. Sorry, for Fulham.
A bit like Van Wolfswinkel as well.
It looks like
Norwich.
And we already know,
and that as well.
And we already know that Zenit had. Is it Zenit he came for? It was Zenit, wasn't it? They had to.
I believe so.
Sorry.
It was one of the Russian teams with money.
Well, they had to offload him because I think coming in Russian football now is a cap on the number of foreign players. They had to offload him. Rondon might not have really wanted to leave, but obviously as he was one of
no one wants to
players,
go to West Brom.
Well, yeah, I'd agree.
No one wants to be in Russia.
I'd agree with that.
To be fair.
But
I must apologise to the one Russian listener listening right now.
No, not Russia. I didn't mean Russia.
Say West Brom.
I meant West Bromwich. I was.
Oh, I was apologising on behalf of Ben saying that who wants to be in Russia.
But I mean,
no, they're a dreadful country for football. Look at the way what's his face has just been. What's his face? That's disrespectful.
Frimpong.
Look at the way Frimpong's just been treated.
Yeah.
No wonder Rondon wanted to leave and come to the Premier League.
But he might not have wanted to come to West Brom, so I question whether he will be able to perform that well this season. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah.
Okay. But that was we've spent far too long talking about. We spent 40 minutes on Chelsea, and now we've decided to spend 10 minutes on a 0-0. Southampton versus Everton wasn't 0-0, and Lukaku is a lovely boy, not because of his goals, but because he hit a woman in the crowd and he said, "Oh, would you like a cuddle?" I would love a cuddle from Lukaku. I'll say now, Jack, if a Premier League footballer could cuddle you, Keno, you answer this as well. Who would you like to be cuddled
Charlie
by
Adam.
in the Premier League?
Charlie Adam.
Oh, that's not the right answer. Incorrect. No points. You lose a point from the quiz earlier. Because that's a bad answer. Callum, who would you like to be cuddled by?
I'm just trying. I mean, I would probably.
Who would you like to crescent yourself into the bosom of?
Can Pochettino cuddle me because he shows emotion in when.
I'm trying to think of the most sort of amicable people. Steve McLaren would be quite nice, wouldn't he? He'd be like, come in.
He'd be too nice. He'd be my bitch. I'd slap McLaren all over the place.
Vincent Kompany.
If I could pick anyone, I'd pick Sven Eriksson. Sorry, I should say his middle name, shouldn't I?
You wouldn't.
Sven-Göran Eriksson.
Yeah, I've never heard him described as Sven Eriksson.
The problem is,
you know, earlier in the show I mentioned quotes about him. There's a fantastic quote, and I can't read it all out here, but it's basically about Didier Hamann talking about Sven and how they were out in time.
Jack. Why have you got quotes about Sven?
Where are we going?
This was
you were talking about quotes earlier, and I was just reading. There's some great quotes from Didier Hamann, of all people's, autobiography about Sven and how they drank to life.
Keno, why are we doing that?
I was about to say, Ben, where are we going?
Can I have a hug with Hamann and Sven?
I would say.
I feel like
quickly.
I've got some built-up emotional turmoil that's manifesting itself in me.
All right.
Lukaku can't believe this. He scores 2 away from home, and we're talking about Sven-Göran Eriksson's book.
Coming back to Lukaku, I think it was Rio Ferdinand tweeted like the key thing for Lukaku is he has to try and sustain form like this for 10, 15 games a season at least.
That's such shit punditry though, because you said about any player.
But it's the first time he scored 2 goals since November 2013.
Exactly, it's true that he does blow hot and cold. More so than and for a player it cost Everton 24 million, you'd expect him to give a consistent contribution throughout the season. And kind of like Everton, he was patchy last year, and obviously he was really good on loan. But you'd like to see him continue because it's obvious he's got the talent and the potential to be a fantastic player. But I think most people would really want to see him become that kind of next sort of Drogba. That was who he was touted as, become that kind of Drogba-esque player. Because on his day, he is really unplayable.
Yeah, notable mention to Ross Barkley as well, who had... But Barkley's he's a funny player. He's still young. Sometimes you see him and you go, wow, England's next great hope. And then sometimes you see him and go, how was he playing in the Premier League? But against Southampton, he looked really good.
I think Barkley, he's one of my favourite players to watch actually in the league, I would say. He doesn't... So much ability, so much potential. And often, even that the finish for his goal, he didn't look... this is going to sound quite bad towards English players, but he didn't look like an English player cutting in off the left.
Well, he is half Nigerian or some distant... He is like part Nigerian, Barkley. You wouldn't know.
But it looked like a Dutch or German finish. It looked like sort of I am a footballer and I am good.
It wouldn't have looked out of place in the Champions League, that kind of goal. He is fantastic to watch when he's on form. Like Lukaku, just hope he can keep going for England's sake as well.
When he's not, he is the biggest passenger in that Everton
side. That is the problem.
Which is a major problem.
Roberto Martinez has got to be hoping that Lukaku can keep it up. And I don't know if you heard his quote when he was asked about Lukaku's form. And
was this from a man's book?
No. This is just from the weekend. But Martinez basically said maybe he'll have to hit a woman every game. Which is going to be in 30 years' time is going to be like this off-quote topic of the start of a quiz, isn't it? And it's going to be him said that quote.
He's trying to take the pressure off Mourinho. He's like, my sexist friend Mourinho is getting a lot of stick here. I'll back him up by saying that I also think the beating of women is acceptable.
I feel like the ForTheFans kind of 2030, that's going to be one of the quotes that we get asked. Like, who said maybe you'll have to hit a woman every game? I can see it now.
But you'll definitely think it was Mourinho, though, based on what's happened.
So, what do you make of Southampton? Because Southampton's defence is what gave them such a strong footing last year. They broke the top 7, which I don't think it's even a thing, breaking the top 7. But I think it surprised a lot of people, particularly given their departures. Their last 8 games, they've not kept a clean sheet, going beyond last season or into last season as well as this. That seems to have gone. And a 3-0 home defeat to Everton, I'd be a little bit worried.
Yeah, I mean, everyone made such a big deal about the loss of their attacking players last year. But losing Klein and being sort of knocked at the back a bit in terms of their players could be a bigger loss, and it could be more impactful on their season, actually. Like you say...
You look at the goals. You look at where the goals came from, Keno.
Pella.
Schneidlin.
Yeah,
where was he?
Yeah.
I mean the goals they conceded.
Yeah.
One was a counter-attacking move where Schneidlin's sat back at that corner. Rarely did he go forward for corners, is what I'm getting at. You wonder if that would have gone in.
Exactly.
And even the Barkley goal, you wonder if Schneidlin's there, he prevents that sort of thing from happening.
And this year they've kept their attacking players more or less. They've not had anyone snatch from them like last summer. And it'd be interesting to see if that's the thing that would affect them more in a way.
Yoshida can't do anything wrong. Just having the Japanese players in the Premier League.
Again, is that a quote from Didi Haman's book? or is that you saying
That's me saying that. Should we move on to Arsenal? I've just realised we are very far into this podcast. We were like, right, last week we went on a little bit long. We've sat here. I think the quiz took up 10 minutes. Chelsea took up another half an hour. So shall we move on to the Palace?
Yeah, Arsenal. Ozil's brilliant. He's definitely better than Payet. I've got no more to add.
That has been the debate this week, and I don't know where you sit on the fence. I feel weird saying that.
Well, Spencer's brought this up. FIFA YouTuber Spencer Owen has made this outlandish claim that Payet is more valuable to West Ham than Ozil would be, which, fair enough. He did score after all.
I think more valuable in the sense that West Ham don't have a player like him to replace him when he's out. You could put Cazorla, Sanchez, Wilshere, Ramsey. The list goes on. You could maybe play someone in Ozil's position, but I don't know. You can't give Payet till Christmas and see.
I don't know that much about Payet. I don't think any of us do. We don't claim to be connoisseurs of French football, but
that's why it's a silly claim.
I've looked at his stats. he has hot and cold seasons. And I mean, he'll have one good season and 2 or 3 real off seasons where he doesn't get to double figures on the assists or goals combined. Like, it's a case of, can he find that consistency so late in his career? Because you can almost see that, if a player's in his early, like 24, 25, maybe he's a little bit hot and cold and, he'll come good now and he can find that consistency as he matures. This guy's 28, I want to say. I'm pulling out a number. But
you're pretty close, yeah.
But I feel like he's beyond that point. And I feel like this is pretty much his last chance to prove his consistency. And I just wonder if he's going to be one of these players who breaks out at the start of the season and we start hailing him and then he kind of falls into disrepute. I wonder if he might be a bit like Stuart Downing last year, who got absolutely lauded for playing that central attacking midfielder role for West Ham and then fell into relative obscurity and then Middlesbrough by the end of the season.
Yeah. No, that's insulting.
I don't think Pyatt will be rocking up at the Riverside.
Oh, not quite. But
Sunderland will be down at that point, so he might go close.
The thing is, in the first few weeks of doing this season, there will be a lot of kind of predictions coming out almost all the time. Like Pyatt could be a great player for West Ham, could be like Downing was for them for 2/3 of last year, or he could be great for the first 10 games and then.
We might not talk about him again.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
I think it's a bit early to say. Like I say, till Christmas, see how he gets on.
Should we move on to another player who made a bit of a splash in a Swans outfit? See splash sure. Swans. We're getting there. Andre Ayew.
That was the pun. Oh my word! Even for you, that was lower tier.
I'm sorry. That was very poor.
Good grief. Okay, go on.
I was going to talk about Ayew, though. He scored again. And you've got him in your fantasy football team, Benner. You told me last week, kind of before the weekend was up, Ayew immediately going in my fantasy football. So you must be delighted.
Yeah. Well, I took Fabregas and Lukaku out. And admittedly, Lukaku was an error. And put in Payet, who we just spoke about, and Ayew.
You just jumped on the hype train, is basically what you can see.
He did, and I think everyone will be jumping on the Jefferson Montero train as well after. Because talking of sort of attacking creative players, he's actually, although he was kind of finding his feet last year, he still showed flashes. And now he's settled in at Swansea and he's playing every week. I think he actually could go on to have a really good year. Now he's got a year in the Premier League under his belt. He was fantastic.
I'll tell you what's happened there, Jack. Callum Keane was reminded of the quote he said at the beginning of last season, and now he's thinking, do you know what, I'm going to take that
jump
quote
on
and
it.
ride on it.
I'm
going to ride that quote.
What did I say?
You said about Montero being able to take on anyone in the league or something to that effect.
Yeah, he's got one of the best one-on-one ratios in the league, and now it's been proven in the first 2 games, and Callum Keane is saying that he is basically the agent of Jefferson Montero at this point.
I stand by my quote.
Do you think we can judge much about Newcastle? Because obviously Janmaat got sent off just before half-time, which made a difficult job more tricky. Steve McLaren came out at the end and said, we didn't learn anything apart from the fact it's difficult to win with 10 men. Which, well done, Steve.
Great analysis. Cheers, Steve. Thanks for that.
Yeah, Captain Obvious. I want to see.
You should have blamed the physios. That's what you do when you get out to 10, isn't it? Is that not like the protocol?
I don't know.
No?
Well, I think if anything, they should be blaming the lack of shots because Newcastle had 4 shots against Swansea, which is the fewest they've had in a match since March 2012 against Arsenal.
Wow, that was even like Carver had more than that.
Exactly.
There were some other games that happened this weekend, like Villa, Keno.
Yeah.
In a word, Keno.
A lot of people said it was boring. I mean,
it was.
I can't really disagree with that. I thought we were okay. We restricted United to a few shots. Rooney looked absolutely dreadful. Rooney looked like the stereotypical sort of fat boy that everyone's been calling him for the last 10 years. Actually, on the pitch, he was dreadful.
It was like he played for England. It was England Rooney that you saw.
It was England's Rose Wayne Rooney playing. But I feel like maybe Paul Lambert's Villa could have lost that 2 or 3-0. So
Hey, at this time last season, you were top of the league, Keno. So I'll have less about that, about Paul Lambert, the saviour that is Paul Lambert.
Yeah.
And that pretty much wraps us up. But before we end, we've got a few questions from Twitter. Callum, hit us with some of the best ones.
A little shout out for this because we want to get as many as possible. I mean, we had about 10 this week, so it wasn't too bad. We could have had a bit more variety. I mean, we've touched on a few already.
Last week we had 50,000 listeners. We got 10 questions. That's not good enough, I'm afraid, people.
It's not. We want more.
Can I just say, Jack has just lied to the viewers.
He's lied through his teeth. Live
you just said 50,000.
And 5,000.
It was more than 50,000, Jack. It was.
We could have filled the Etihad.
Oh,
No, it was 5,000. So
Either way-
I've got a bit excited there.
Either way, we'd like to see some more. So at For The Fans Show on Twitter, send it in, and we'll read out the good ones on the show. Andrew Webb mentioning about Chelsea. We don't have to answer this one. Do you think Chelsea's chances of retaining the title have been damaged so early on? I don't think so.
I do.
Do you really?
I do.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think
I don't
5
think
points
it's gone that
behind City is damage.
Damage. And behind United as well. Don't forget. Both there.
Yeah, Dave at Graver FM says, do you think Shaqiri will have as big an impact as everyone thinks, or will he flop?
Do people think he's going to have an impact?
Yes, definitely they do.
Because I just...
He's got a cool name, Jack. You don't have a name like Shaqiri.
They ran out
you
of
can't come
queues
and
in the club
be
shop
rubbish.
because it was the fastest selling name in Stoke history, and they ran out of queues. I mean, how many Premier League queues do you need really for names? None. I feel like it would have been nice for them to warn the club shop prior. You know, right, we're going to get an influx of queues, get them ready.
It's a bit of a bit of a sort of English lower league cliche, that is, with the big signings selling out the club shop and all that. Yeah, you're right. They're a Premier League team. They've got loads of money. Buy more shirts and buy more letters. And sort it
I can't
out.
think of another player in the Premier League that's got a Q in his name.
No, I could...
Help me.
Is there a player called
Help me.
Quintero? I'm thinking of generic names that have a Q
No,
in
he
them
was
now.
he was linked with Norwich. I'm struggling here. Viewers, if you're listening, names in the Premier League that have got the letter Q in, I'll take any you've got right now because I am floundering.
Luke Blaghog on Twitter says, at For The Fans Show, who do you think will be this season's most disappointing team? I think we already sort of mentioned Sunderland could be terrible. I mean, they already are.
Yeah.
What else?
I'd stick with that. I've got no more to add. Yeah,
Southampton.
I think Sunderland will be really disappointing.
Southampton could be a disappointment after what we
I
said.
think a lot of their players hit the ground running last year. I think you look at players like Mane and Pele, who Pele dropped off towards the end of the year. And then you look at their defence, and I love Yoshida, but I'm looking alongside him at Font and a few other players who have come in, and I just...
Your love for Yoshida is a bit awkward, isn't it? It's like
I have a
it's
pillow
too
with his
lovely.
face on.
Oh, imagine that. Imagine falling asleep to a little Yoshida.
I feel like...
do as you like, Jack.
I feel like we need to
Do as
get a
you
For The
please.
Fans shop open with t-shirts and pillows with Yoshida's face on.
That's
Which
better.
says out.
So just every single picture will just be a pun that you've come up with. That'll be the
We'll have
problem.
swans splashing.
It's on its
I've
way.
gone through loads of clubs. There's no queues. No wonder they ran out. That's all I'll
Right,
say.
And
No wonder they ran out.
final Twitter question before we go. Miguel Carrera, MC Sports 14 says, at For The Fans Show, do you think that FC Porto have a chance to win the Champions League?
Are they
No.
in the Champions League? 'Cause
Yes, they are.
Yeah, but there's no chance.
I don't think Miguel would be asking that if they weren't. But
well, that's true.
I think Miguel might be an FC Porto fan. I'm just
I feel
guessing.
like we should do a
I'm just
Portuguese
guessing.
episode special.
I mean, we were talking about European football before we started. Well, maybe when all the leagues have started going, we might have a little section, possibly Champions League and
But the
European
way
football.
we're going, it's going to be a big section because we can talk
It
about
will
one game
be.
for half an hour here.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see.
It's not a
Possibly.
problem.
Something to watch out for. Anyway, that's the end of the Twitter questions. Anything else to add, Ben?
And any other business, Jack? You've always got
Wait,
something
Oh,
to say.
I was going to talk about the funny story of the week, which I found funny, which
Let's-
was the fact that a
let's have
United
it.
fan who was sat behind the kind of United bench at their first home game of the year against Tottenham stole Snyder's water bottle.
Schweinsteiger.
Schweinsteiger's, sorry. Schneider's not signed for them yet. Do you know what? I'm glad I'm not a commentator because you've got Schweinsteiger, you've got Schneiderlin. Like, if they signed a few other Schneis, you're going to be in trouble getting the names right.
He was nice.
I was disappointed he didn't get a selfie with Bastion like I did in the summer. He could have just got
Did
his
you steal his
instead.
water bottle, though?
I didn't, no.
I feel like you've taken the shine off the story now, because basically Schweinsteiger's water bottle was stolen by a United fan sat behind the bench.
And Giggs' look was...
There's a look of Giggs. We'll retweet it on the For The Fans Twitter, which if you're not following, it's at For The Fans. It's very funny.
Yeah. Can I one more final thing and then we'll finish? Company wanted Hazard to get diarrhea. Why diarrhea?
I don't know.
Why couldn't it have been anything else? What would you have preferred to see Hazard come down with?
Goals.
Well, that's not awkward. That's not being awkward at all,
Well,
has it, boys?
we've just gone from me butchering names and numbers this episode. So you're talking about diarrhea, so...
I've gone through every Premier League club. Sorry, I'll be honest, I was filling to look through some more clubs. No player has got a Q in their name.
And on that...
I can't believe this.
And on that bombshell, we will end.
Yeah, from me, Dr. Benji, thanks for watching. We're at the Space, thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Good. Right, don't make it sound like you don't want to be
This is a
here.
terrible ending.
Callum Keane, thanks for being here,
Cheers,
mate.
boys. At ForTheFans
Yeah.
Show on Twitter, ForTheFansShow.com. Check it.
And we've got a Facebook as well, which you should
And
like.
if you listen to iTunes, rate us up.
Oh yeah! Oh, to all the people that did, thank you very much.
Do
We're
that.
back in the charts like nobody's business. I mean, if you've got to this point of the podcast, that's a miracle. Because what we've just spoken about for the
We've
last 10
literally
minutes
talked
has been
about
a
shit.
shambles.
Like,
Well, I
literally.
mean, what do people expect? When we told you that this was going to be, the podcast was coming back, were you expecting professionalism? You're an idiot if you thought that.
For real, though.
This is for the...
Seriously,
Go
go
on.
and rate on iTunes. That is... that's the most important
He's
thing.
towing the party line.
We
He's
were
towing
ahead
the
of
party
Stan
line.
Collymore for 3 days this week. That's good enough for me. Can we do it
And
again?
Gary
Is
Neville.
it only 3 days? That's piss poor. All right, well, if you have enjoyed the podcast, thanks for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, do leave a like on the video. Leave a comment. Maybe we'll read out some of the best ones next week. From me, Dr. Benji, from Jack and Callum, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Sculpture of a gold Benji. It's perfection. Keener, I think you're going to have to be calling for an oxygen mask over here, my friend.